I want some more, Abena. It tastes so delicious, her customer said. Abena, a beautiful young woman, was known for her delicious beef stew throughout the land. It reminded them of someone familiar, someone they'd rather forget, but they couldn't get enough of her food, so they kept coming back for more. Once upon a time, in a large village of Pando, lived peaceful African people with a rich tradition, cultural heritage, and skilled craftsmanship. King Kofi, a well-respected king of the Pando people, led them with love and justice, but his weakness for beautiful women sometimes interfered with his leadership. He could barely contain himself whenever he saw a strikingly beautiful woman. King Kofi had 3 wives only because his first wife had played her cards well. One day, feeling bored, he decided to try something new to lift his mood. Without informing his queen, he summoned the town's crier to announce that there would be a cooking festival in the palace the next day, inviting anyone skilled in the kitchen to participate, with a prize for the best cook. Among many other women was Afia, a young woman with unique cooking abilities. She owned a small restaurant in the village, but although her food was good, she barely had customers. She started the business after her father's brothers took all her late father's properties, leaving her and her mother with nothing. Since the incident, Afia's mother had suffered from one illness after another and was never well. Afia planned to take part in the contest, hoping if she won, she could use the money to pay for her mother's medical bills. She prayed to God to help her on the day of the festival. The next day, Afia and the villagers made their way to the palace. Within an hour, everything was set up: cooking stoves, food supplies, and various ingredients for the candidate to choose from. Each contestant selected the ingredients for their dish and began cooking. Some finished within 30 to 45 minutes, but Afia took 1 hour and 30 minutes, allowing the flavors of each ingredient to blend perfectly. She was careful and precise, adjusting ingredients thoughtfully rather than guessing. She was already receiving judgmental looks. "Look at her. She knows nothing of what she's doing. She's just wasting our time to seem like she knows," someone said, but she stood firm, focused on her task. The king tasted the dishes brought by the other candidate, but none tasted right. Some were too sour, salty, watery, oily, spicy, or the meat wasn't cooked to perfection. The crowd thought no one would win, assuming that Afia, often seen as a child who could do no good, would also fail. When she finished, she presented her dish to the king. King Kofi closed his eyes to savor the taste. It was so flavorful, with just the right balance of everything. "Be my wife," he said, and the crowd gasped. No one expected that, and for a moment they thought she had put love potion in his food. But since all ingredients were openly available, they quickly dismissed the thought. The first wife's face had turned into a frown, her body filled with anger. "Forgive me, my king, but I am already betrothed to someone," Afia replied. She had lied, hoping the king would believe her. "Oh, that's a pity. I would have loved you to be my wife. Your beauty and talent would make me feel younger," he said, smiling. "But I have another proposal for you. Be my royal chef." "My king, I would be delighted to cook for you. Thank you," she said, smiling, still in disbelief at the turn of events. Indeed, life can be strange. As usual, no one was happy for her. They felt she didn't deserve the king's proposal. The onlooker's face twisted with disgust. The king finished Afia's bowl of beef stew, confirming she was the winner, and awarded her a bag of good coins. The crowd dispersed, disappointed. Afia thanked the king and returned home in happiness, thinking of all the things she could do with the prize money. She would repair their tattered hut and take care of her mother. The next day, she took her to the village hospital where she received treatment and began to recover. Curious about the source of the money, her mother asked, "My daughter, I hope you did not sleep with men to get this money." Afia looked at her surprised. "Mother, you know I would never do that. This money was a prize I won from the cooking competition held at the palace." Reassured, Afia's mother was relieved. The king dismissed Eno, the previous royal chef, and gave the position to Afia. Eno was displeased. She prided herself on being the best, but now her position had been taken away. "How can a nobody take my position in the palace, just when I was getting closer to the prince? Just wait, Afia. I will strike when you least expect it," she muttered, pacing furiously in front of her hut. Afia soon began working in the royal kitchen, preparing everything the king ordered. King Kofi, never a big eater, had developed a new appetite for her food. Whenever Afia served him, he would give her flirtatious looks, indirectly reminding her that he was still interested, despite her betrothal. As Afia continued working in the royal kitchen, her enemies multiplied. The queen noticed the way her husband looked at Afia, fearing that if she didn't act, the king would marry her. The queen could see he spoke to Afia in ways he had never spoken to her, and the thought of losing him filled her with anger and frustration. She paced in the royal garden, worry creasing her face. "My queen, why do you look so troubled? Is there something I can help you with?" The queen stopped and looked towards the voice. "Eno, what are you doing here? I thought you were relieved of your duties," she asked. "Yes, my queen, but I came to see you." Afia had been a thorn in my side. Since she entered the palace, I have never had peace. My husband praises her, adores her more than any of his wives. "I want her out of the way," the queen said angrily. "That makes the two of us," Eno replied. "I can't stand her. She acts like she's better than everyone." "I am with you, my queen. What's the plan?" Eno asked. The queen thought for a while, but couldn't devise a plan. "Let's meet here at this time tomorrow. By then, I should have a plan," she said. The queen paced in her room, pondering wicked ideas. Maybe I could frame her by planting my husband's favorite beads in her room. No, that won't work. Kofi likes her too much to punish her. Perhaps I could poison her food, but what if she serves it to my husband? She weighed her option until she finally came up with a plan. The next day, she met with Eno, whispered her scheme, and they both smiled, exchanging high fives. The queen was vigilant all week, waiting for the perfect time to put her plan into action. Soon, the opportunity arrived. "Afia, when you finish cooking, take the food to the king's chambers. He said he would like to eat there today," the queen told her. Afia had never served the king in his chambers, but she dared not disobey the queen. She arranged the food on a tray and took it to the king's chambers, then returned to the kitchen to clean up. A few minutes later, she was called by the king, who requested his meal. Afia looked at him confused. "My king, I already served you food in your chambers," she said. "My chambers? But why?" the king asked. I prefer to eat here. Go and retrieve it, the king said. Okay, my king, Afia replied. She didn't understand what was happening and could only pray that she was not a pawn in the queen's game. She retrieved the food and served the king in his preferred place. After the king finished eating, he took a short walk and then retired to his chamber for rest. Soon, a terrifying scream echoed through the palace. It was the king. The queen hurried in, pretending to be concerned. My king, I heard you scream. What's wrong? The king's face was full of shock and fury. Who entered my chambers and broke our ancient gem? He shouted. The queen gasped dramatically. My king, Afia was the only one who entered your chambers today. What? But why would she do this? The king asked, still in disbelief. He immediately summoned his council of elders, who gathered to address the emergency. My king, we heard there's a matter of great importance, one elder said. Yes, the ancient gem of our kingdom is broken, he said sadly. What? The elders gasped, covering their mouths in shock. But how, my king? They asked. I don't know. I just found it broken, and my wife mentioned that Afia was the only one in my chambers today. Afia was summoned, and when she saw the angry faces, she immediately felt afraid. Kneeling, she greeted everyone present. Afia, what were you doing in my chambers that led you to break our sacred gem? The king demanded. The gem had been a symbol of good fortune, protection, and prosperity in the kingdom for centuries. My king, I know nothing of this. I have never even seen a gem in my life, she pleaded. If not you, then who? An elder challenged. I am innocent, she cried. She must be punished, declared another elder. The punishment for this offense is to be buried alive. The king, feeling pity for her, tried to offer a different option. My chiefs, could we consider a lesser punishment? What if she embarked on a journey to retrieve another gem? Where would she find a gem like that? Another elder argued. The gem was given by our ancestors. There is no replacement. The queen interrupted, pretending to be concerned again. My king, perhaps Afia was simply curious. Let's sleep on this and decide again tomorrow. For now, she should be in the dungeon, the king said, sounding tired. Afia, weak with despair, cried herself into exhaustion, knowing her plea had gone unheard. Some elders considered the king's suggestion but were secretly visited by the queen that night, who threatened them into agreeing to a severe punishment for Afia. Fearing for their lives and families, they agreed. The next day, Afia was buried alive. Her cries and curses ignored by the villagers, who were glad to see her being punished. With Afia gone, Eno regained her position in the palace kitchen. Then one day, a very beautiful woman appeared in the village market, cooking beef stew in a large pot. The aroma filled the air, and people couldn't resist her food. Abena was her name. Abena, your food tastes so delicious. I can't have enough, a man said, as the routine continued daily, as the villagers continued to patronize from her. 2 months later, strange things began to happen in the village. People started falling ill, many dying in their sleep. At first, it seemed coincidental, but soon enough, the villagers became terrified, uncertain who would be the next. When words reached the king, he called on the chief priest to consult the gods. but the gods were silent, which deeply troubled him. Trying to reassure him, Queen Amma said, "My husband, death is a natural phenomenon. Perhaps it's simply their time." But the king remained unconvinced. The queen remained untroubled, since none of her calamities affected her personally, until one morning, when cries filled the palace. Queen Asi's daughter had died in her sleep. Realizing the severity, the king saw the need for immediate intervention. "Who is making such a disturbance?" the queen shouted. "My queen, Queen Asi had just lost her daughter," a maid replied. "And does that justify bursting my eardrums?" she retorted coldly. The maid knew the queen was self-centered, but this callousness was new. Exactly a week later, Queen Amma's only son died in his sleep. Devastated, she cursed whoever had inflicted such pain on her. Now she understood the suffering others felt and regretted her own heartlessness. Her health deteriorated and no treatment worked. The chief priest was summoned again, but even he was powerless. "My queen, please eat so you can take your medicine," said a maid. The queen, nauseated, replied, "I can't stomach this food. Get me something else." One maid suggested fruit from the market, from the popular Abena. Eager to please, the maid rushed to get some, and the queen ate eagerly. Suddenly, the dish transformed into maggot before her eyes. At that moment, all she could see was late Afia's face. Horrified, she screamed, "I will confess, I will confess." She confessed all her wrongdoings and fell to the ground, taking her last breath. Outside, Eno screamed, for she had become blind, deaf, and mute, barely alive. The chief priest announced that the land needed cleansing, and an Afia spirit needed to be appeased. The queen was thrown into the evil forest, and peace was gradually restored to the kingdom. There is a saying in the Igbo language: "If one finger touches the oil, it spreads to the other fingers." This is a typical example of what Queen Amma did. Her atrocities came back to haunt the whole village. And again, people do not need a reason to hate or dislike you. That's how humans are. Just live your life and be good. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoy. Please don't forget to like, comment, and share. See you in our next one. Bye.